Hello tipsters and tricksters, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video about my experiences whilst living in France. If you're new to my channel, my name is B. I'm a vintage glamour enthusiast and musician. I make vintage beauty and style videos with a little bit of sustainability, veganism and lifestyle thrown in for good measure. So if that sounds like your jam, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know my videos come out. So I've made a couple of videos now about my experiences whilst living in Paris. One was about Emily in Paris, the TV show, and how that compared to my experience as an expat from Australia. I also made a video about culture shocks when living in France compared to Australian culture, and I've made some of my favorite French phrases. So today I thought I would share what my favorite things about living in Paris or France are, and why I would recommend living in the fabulous city of Paris and also visiting the country of France in general. So I hope that you enjoy that. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
What have you got if you haven't got love?
So without a doubt, Paris is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I did live in Paris for a year back in 2017, and my partner for the past 5 years was a Frenchman. So I spent a lot of time in France, even though I moved over to the UK after I lived in Paris. I do speak the French language and just love the French culture. I would have to say, in terms of lifestyle, France is the country that I enjoy the lifestyle of the most for reasons that I will share in this video. And I just adore the French language, which brings me to today's sponsor, which is Lingoda. Parlez-vous français? Hey! Parlez-vous français? Hey! Si tu veux mieux parler français, prends un cours avec Lingoda. Obscure reference, but if you know, you know. After a course with Lingoda, your French will be better than the lyrics of that song, which Art vs Science clearly got from Google Translate. I have worked with Lingoda in a previous video, which I will link up above, so I was really delighted that they wanted to work with me again, which of course means that I can bring you guys more language learning deals. C'est super! So Lingoda has a new autumn course to get you honing up your language learning skills before 2021 is over. If you are up to the challenge of taking your language learning skills to the next level and committed to language learning for 60 days, then a Lingoda intensive course might just be for you. The best thing about the courses, in my opinion, is the incentive they provide to get you powering through your coursework. So if you complete 15 classes a month for 2 months, you will get 50% cash back. And if you complete 30 classes a month for 2 months, you will get 100% cash back on your classes. What? Oui. What I personally love about Lingoda is that the classes are small and they're conducted on Zoom so that you actually practice what you are learning and get immediate feedback from your teacher and get to have conversation with your other classmates. I find that this is way better than watching videos and listening to audio and then doing multiple choice questions. Personally, I tend to nail that kind of language learning course, but then I still have zero confidence when it comes to actually having a conversation in French. So Lingoda gets you right in there conversing straight away and practicing the language skills that you are learning so that you can go from small talk to conversation in no time. Registration is open until the 3rd of September with classes starting on September 7th running through to November 5th. Languages on offer include French, German, Spanish, Business English and classes are available 24/7 so that you can learn on your own schedule. And of course I have a special offer for you guys, so if you use my discount code B20 and the link below to sign up, you will get €20 off of the sprint course. Thank you once again to Lingoda for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel and bringing us some wonderful language learning incentives along the way. Let's get back to the regular scheduled content. All right, so let's get into the reasons why I love Paris. So this is just a handful of some of my favorite things. Of course, there are many more, but these are some of the things that I'm forever talking about when people ask me what I like the most about living in Paris. So number one has to be the metro. I think of all the cities that I have visited in the world, Paris has got to have the best public transport system. There is a train like every 2 minutes, but I think like sometimes it feels like they're every 30 seconds, like one leaves and another one immediately appears. It's also really easy if your route for some reason gets disrupted because of an issue on the line to like find another way of getting where you want to go because of the way that the lines work. They do cross each other and stuff so that when you go to different stations, there's multiple lines at each station. Just something I really appreciate because I'd have to say in the UK, whilst London's trains come very regularly, if there is an issue on your line, it's often very difficult to get there another way, and you often get stuck on the metro and you don't move. And so you don't have any choice. You just have to accept that you're going to be horribly late. Whereas I always found with Paris, my delays weren't that long. And if I really was going to be stuck somewhere, I could jump off at the next station, run to a near metro station. That's the other thing, is there's like, within very short walking distance, there is another metro station with other lines on it. So getting around the city is really, really easy. It is also super affordable, especially if you have a job in France, because your jobs usually subsidize your transport. So you still have to pay, but they will give you a big donation towards the cost of your transport each month, and you buy a monthly ticket. And I believe that my workplace paid a good like 1/3 of my public transport costs every month, which is just amazing. And I believe that that's subsidized by the government. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's because they get tax incentives for contributing to their staff's public transport use. So yeah, love the metro in Paris. The next and probably most obvious thing about Paris when you step out, especially coming from a newer developed country like Australia, where we don't have kind of the history and architecture that a city like Paris does, is that the city is just so beautiful. And I think they take a lot more pride in maintaining the beauty of the city and respecting the history of it. Because in Australia, we have some really beautiful buildings, but they're often just slapped with advertising. So the only way you know the building is beautiful is to look up at the second, third, and fourth stories, etc. Sure, there's signage and stuff in France, but it tends to be a lot smaller, or it tends to be separated from the building. They don't stick a massive billboard over the front of a beautiful Haussmannian building. So when you walk around the city, you can actually appreciate its beauty on street level. And to me, that was something that I just appreciated so much. Add into that the cobblestone streets, the beautiful old lampposts, even the bins and stuff tend to be encased in like wrought iron cases, or like what is the word for that? But you know what I mean. Everything kind of comes together. The way that the street looks, and when they add things to the street, it tends to work with what is already there, as opposed to just being like, oh, we're slapped this modern cheap thing in there and we don't care whether it ruins the kind of overall beauty of the space. That's not to say that Paris is not a dirty city. Paris is pretty smelly and dirty, especially the metros. I know I said I love them, but they do stink. But it is also very, very beautiful. So that's something that I personally really appreciate. And I know lots of other people say that Paris is a very beautiful city. And I think that respect for the history and the architecture of the city and what that contributes to its reputation is something that is really, really great about Paris. I mean, this is kind of an obvious one, but patisseries and bakeries on every corner. You can't step more than a few feet in any direction without coming across a fantastic patisserie and a fantastic bakery, so that you always have a supply of really good pastries and really good bread. So even in the small local town that my French boyfriend's family lived in, they had a selection of different bakeries, so they could choose the best baker that they like to buy their regular bread from. And this is the case with most small towns. Like, it's not like one bakery, or if there is only one in that local area, a very short drive away will be another small town with a bakery as well. So it's like really important to the culture in France to have like a local baker, and every family has a boulangerie that is their preferred bakery or boulangerie. Same with the pâtissière. There are places that people love to go to get their desserts and their pastries, and they are like really dedicated to that patisserie. And you might think that there wouldn't be any vegan patisseries and bakeries in France because that would be a cultural travesty. However, in Paris, there are fantastic vegan patisseries. In particular, my favorite croissant, a vegan croissant, is from a cafe called Cloud Cakes, which is near Châtelet. And the little area that it's in is also really gorgeous. It's kind of like these 3 different direction cobblestone streets that merge near Châtelet-Léal, and tucked into one of the corners amongst a bunch of really fantastic restaurants and a whole bunch of vegan restaurants as well is Cloud Cakes. They make fantastic cupcakes and cakes as well. Really good coffee, which is somewhat hard to find in Paris, and these amazing croissants, which Val said he could not tell the difference from. Like, he was just like, that's just a really good croissant. You wouldn't know that that's a vegan croissant. So highly recommend. The other place that you can of course get croissants but also all sorts of vegan pastry is VG Patisserie. It is a vegan only patisserie, and that's near Republic. It's like a 10-minute walk, maybe not even that far from Republic as well. So highly recommend going there. It's run by a proper pastry chef who trained in traditional methods and then became vegan and decided to specialize in vegan pastries. It's absolutely beautiful with a huge selection of really traditional pastries from France, but obviously with all vegan ingredients. Okay, this one was really big for me. I am a food lover. I really love natural produce, and something that totally blew me away was the quality of fruit and vegetables in France. Of course, if you go to a street market or something, or you go to one of the big food markets, of course the quality is going to be really good, but the quality of fruit and vegetables just in the corner store, in little greengrocers nearby, and even in the giant supermarkets was so good. And I think France is very proud of their produce. They have stricter laws when it comes to the use of pesticides and things compared to the UK and Australia. And just the quality and flavor of the vegetables is so much better. Like if you buy a tomato in France from the supermarket, it has flavor as opposed to the like watery, flowery tasting tomatoes that you get in Australia and the UK. French tomatoes, zucchinis, eggplants, everything, all the lettuce, everything has so much flavor. And I think it's because they don't use as many pesticides. And also you don't have to worry as much about the level of pesticides on normal fruit and veg. They of course have organic options as well, but the normal fruit and veggies, from what I understand, is closer to the level in Australia of organic veggies. The selection tends to be very, very small. In Australia, we have a bigger fruit and veg section, but the quality of what is available in France is just so much better. This is totally random and probably quite subjective, but France has a crazy selection of yogurt flavors. Now, obviously being vegan, I'm eating soy yogurt, but even in a totally normal supermarket in the middle of the countryside, I found a huge selection of soy yogurt. Finding vegan food, as in like vegan specialty food, like obviously fruit and veg and beans and rice and all of that you can find in any supermarket, but like, you know, vegan mock meats and vegan cheeses and stuff like that are quite hard to come by if you're not in a major city with access to kind of specialty stores. But in a totally normal supermarket in the middle of nowhere, they've got lemon, prune, fig, multiple different kinds of berry. They have chocolate flavors and vanilla and caramel, and like just the selection is mind-blowing. I don't know why of all of the things they decided soy yogurt was like the one product that they would make available to the vegetarian and vegan community, but it's highly available. And of course, if you're not vegetarian or vegan and you're eating the normal yogurts, there is a huge selection as well, bigger of course. Highly recommend trying yogurts in France. It is a really big thing after dinner to eat fruit and yogurt as your dessert if you're not having, you know, pastries and things or cakes. So I'm not surprised that there's a lot of yogurt options, but I was really surprised that it was so easy to find vegan yogurt options. I also really appreciate about the French culture the general respect for history and culture and art. Coming from Australia, of course there is plenty of Australians who appreciate those things, but it is definitely kind of a marker of what kind of person you are. Whereas I think in general, their education system teaches this to French people because it's part of their history, right? They're still going to know who like the key players of art history are, you know? They're still going to know names like Picasso and Monet, etc. and the great philosophers like Simone de Beauvoir. They're still going to know who the great musicians are, like philosophy, art, you name it. They know who the key players are historically, whereas I feel like that is not so common in Australia. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I met a pretty mixed bag of people over there. Even if they personally didn't find it to be an interest or something that they wanted to pursue or even really have a conversation about, they still knew who those people were, which I think is great. I think it's so important to have knowledge of your culture and your history. Something else I really appreciate on a day-to-day level is the fact that everyone just says bonjour. There's this expectation that if you want to ask someone for directions, you want a customer service representative to serve you, you need to say bonjour. And it's really, really rude not to, which is something I discussed in my previous video about culture shocks. You do not just walk into a store and start telling them what you want, which when you think about it is rude anyway, but is quite common in English speaking countries. It's definitely appreciated by the staff if you say hello and are nice to them, but there's that like customers always right point of view, whereas in France, like, You're not gonna get good customer service or maybe even served at all if you don't say bonjour first. I actually really like that. I just think it's so nice, and it is very common to pass someone on the street and just have a total stranger say bonjour to you. I found that was the case even in Paris. Maybe not, you know, when you're walking in the main like touristy sections because people are going to the office or whatever, but in the suburb of Paris that we lived, when I walked down the street, I didn't know these people. I didn't see them regularly. We were still surrounded by an awful lot of people, so the likelihood of crossing paths with the same person every day was very slim. But within our local area where we lived, if I walked down to the local shop and I passed people along the way, they would all say bonjour to me. In France, it's just expected that you're going to have manners. You say please and thank you and hello to everybody, and I like that. The next thing that is really great is that normal eateries stay open late. So if you've gone out to a bar for drinks with your friends and you feel like getting a late night snack, you're not just stuck with like kebabs or dirty chips or McDonald's or something. You've got, you know, a broad array of options to have a beautiful French meal at somewhere that's still open. Like some of them will stay open till after midnight. And that's totally normal because the nightlife in Paris is very, very active, and a lot of people don't leave the house to go out for their evening until like 10 o'clock. And as I've said before, if you're having a dinner party or meeting friends out for dinner, dinner can often be quite late. I'm talking like 9, 10 o'clock at night. So yeah, that's normal. Whereas I find in Australia, like restaurants will close at 10. Like they're not, a lot of the time they won't even seat you or offer you a meal past 9:30 because they're like, look, the kitchen's going to close in half an hour. We don't want to keep the staff late. Like, no, you can't come in. They'll do a seating at 6 o'clock and a seating at 8 o'clock. And that's pretty much it. After that, if you want to stay somewhere, it tends to be European specific restaurants, and they tend to be in certain areas of the city that are like, you know, Little Italy or something, that will stay open later because they're presenting their culture from another country in their restaurant. But generally, restaurants in Australia don't stay open that late. Whereas in France, you can still eat at a nice eatery and stuff at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, because just because you're out at that time doesn't mean that you're trashed. In my life, if I'm going to settle somewhere, I do feel like maybe it's going to be France. I really miss the country. And one of the biggest reasons that I miss it is because of this like attitude to lifestyle and work-life balance that I think is different to Australia and the UK. So for example, with work in the UK and Australia, most jobs will only give you 30 minutes off work. That's the moment you leave, go and get your food, and you have to be back on the floor or at your desk 30 minutes later. And by the time you've like gone to get your bag and your wallet, gone out, gotten your food and gotten back, you still haven't had time to eat it, and you're having to work and eat at the same time. And a lot of people will bring their lunch to work and never have a break. They will just get their food out of their bag and continue to work. In France, you stop work, you go and you actually have a break. The day is in two separate parts. I mean, I'm sure there's situations where people don't stop work, but I think as a general rule, it's expected that you're going to stop for lunch. A lot of places even have their own cafeteria that is heavily subsidized, so you can get a really cheap lunch. And we're talking like a 3-course meal. Like you're going to have salad, a main, and a dessert for maybe for like €10, probably even a drink with that as well. A lot of workplaces have set it up so that you have somewhere to go to leave the office space to eat your lunch and take a break, which I like because it means you're rejuvenated and you want to go back to work and you're nice and fresh and ready for the second half of your day. I have been told by some of the French people that I know that they find it weird that people in the UK and Australia eat at their desk, and that they think their work colleagues would not be okay with that. It would just be like, can you eat somewhere else? Like, I don't want to hear you eating and munching on your food and smell your lunch while I'm trying to work. Like, go to the cafeteria or like go to the break room. I'd be interested to hear whether you guys think that that is true, but I can see why. Like, it's two really separate things. Like, work and eating and relaxation should be separated, in my opinion. But I think in general, there's this attitude of like work-life balance. Like, don't get me wrong, there's people who work crazy hours in France, and especially in Paris. Like, it's a big city. But I think there is also this strong sense of like family time. Like, people sit down and eat meals together. A lot of it has to do with food, but you know, appreciating the pleasures of life, be that food, wine, art, culture, cinema, things like that, I think is much more prevalent in France, and particularly in Paris, than it is in other major cities that I've lived in or that I've visited. And I personally really appreciate that, and I miss that. Kind of touching into my last topic a little bit is taking time to enjoy food and your meals. The process of eating a meal is much slower and longer. It's easier to digest. You tend to eat the 3 courses, but you eat in much smaller amounts of each course, so you can actually enjoy it more, unless it's Christmas. Christmas is scary. At least in the family I was part of. Yeah, you eat smaller amounts, but you get a nice variety. You have your nibbles, your aperitif with a drink and maybe some like nuts and chips and stuff beforehand, or like dried fruit, etc., olives, with, you know, a wine or a kir or a kir royal. Kir is a white wine with cassis. Cassis, I think, is blackberry liqueur, and a Kir Royal is with Cremant, which is the Burgundy version of champagne, because champagne comes from Champagne, so it's not called champagne in Burgundy. You might have that as your aperitif, then you have like salad or some kind of entree, maybe asparagus with mayonnaise, or like, I don't know, there's like multiple different things you could have as an entree. And then your main meal, which tends to be much smaller serving than what you would get in Australia or in the UK, because you've already had apéro and you've had your entree, so your main doesn't need to be so big. And then there is always dessert, whether that be the yogurt and fruit that I mentioned earlier, or whether it's a pastry, or whether it's some sort of cake or pudding or whatever, but there will always be a dessert as well. And so dinner is this long, slow, very nice process that all of you are engaged in. You sitting around, conversation is an important part of it. Drinking wine with your meal is an important part of it, and, you know, often a tipple afterwards, a digestif. Yeah, I just really, really enjoy that. I think France is really known for its appreciation of food and its pride in its food, but it's so entrenched in the culture, and it is something really lovely that I think anybody who is a food lover is really going to appreciate about the culture. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, that is the video. I hope you liked it. Thank you once again to our sponsor, Lingoda. Don't forget to check out the link below if you're interested in taking some language learning courses. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the video and any suggestions for future videos. Come and follow me on my Instagram. Check out my Patreon. It is linked down below. I have extra content over there. We have our little community over on Discord, as well as a ton of other perks. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye.